Okay, we're broadcasting live. Welcome, everyone. This is the Book Talk Nation chat with Jill Shalvis. So as you'll see, this works a little bit like an author event in a bookstore. Jill will talk about her new book, Then Came You. If you haven't ordered a copy of Then Came You, you can order a copy right here on this page next to the video window, and she will sign and personalize all of those copies that are purchased here at Book Talk Nation. And then local indie bookstore, Sundance Books, will ship those right to your door. Now, those sales will close tomorrow night at midnight. So if you want the signed and personalized copy, you want to make sure you get it in by then. She also has several of her other books available, as you can find on the side of this page or at booktalknation.com. In about 20 minutes, we're going to take your questions for Jill. So questions that you submitted ahead of time, or there's a chat feature right underneath this video window where you can type in your questions right there and she'll answer those as well. Until then, I'm going to turn it over to our interviewer tonight, Karen Holt. Karen Holt is the editor of CN Times Books and the newly launched imprint Reservoir Square Books. Additionally, her author interviews, book reviews, and features about the publishing industry have appeared frequently in the Oprah Magazine, Essence, Parade, and other publications. So a big welcome to Karen and to Jill, and I'll turn it over to you guys.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. Jill Shalvis is the award-winning New York Times and USA Today best-selling author of over 4 dozen romance novels, including the Lucky Harbor series. She's here today to talk about Then Came You, book 5 in her Animal Magnetism series. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So this series is all about hunky guys who work with animals.
Yes.
What can a woman tell about a man by how he treats animals?
Oh, I think you can tell everything about a man by how he treats animals. His character, his heart, if he's funny. I know we're all attracted to the cute guy, but it comes right down to the heart of him. And watching a big hunky guy with a puppy or a kitten or a cranky cow, it doesn't matter. However he handles that animal, that tells a lot about him.
So would you ever, or have you ever broken up before you got married? Have you ever broken up with a guy because he wasn't an animal lover?
No, I did break up with a guy because I didn't like how he treated a waitress, but he probably didn't treat his dog very well either.
That's a good point. So in this book, and I'm not giving anything away because this is at the very beginning, but Emily and Wyatt, the two lovers in this book, they originally get together in a one-night stand. So
yes,
do you
first.
think the first? Do you think that a one-night stand can ever really turn into love?
Well, I think it depends on who you are. In Emily's case, she's a little bit buttoned up, she's a little bit anal, a little bit OCD, and she's never had a one-night stand. So she decides to let loose for one single night and have this one-night stand, and then she goes home, which is, hundreds of miles away. And what happens in Reno doesn't stay in Reno, because when she starts her new job 4 months later, her one-night stand is her new boss. So that's kind of, coming back to bite her in the butt, so to speak. She didn't intend for that to happen, and she didn't intend to ever have to think about her one-night stand again. So in her case, I think she's forgiven for that little wild fling, because she has to finish it now.
What's really fun about this book is that even though they're both desperately attracted to each other, I think in a lot of ways, Emily is really the one who is often initiating sex, or she's the one that she just cannot keep her hands off of him.
It has to be that way. He feels that way too. He can't keep his butt. He's in the position of authority, so he has to be really careful.
He exercises a little more discipline than she does sometimes.
And in life, in general, he's very disciplined, and she, loses her discipline, so to speak.
So, do you think it's become more acceptable now, at least in fiction, for women to be honest and assertive about when they're sexually attracted?
Yes, absolutely, and I think that's happening in life in general, and the generation that's out there having, they're sowing their wild oats, and I don't see a problem with that at all, with responsibility and all that. Definitely not who Emily is. This is an anomaly, this thing she did. And so that's what was so fun, and that's where I was able to mine so much comedy out of it, because it's not who she is, and yet she has to own up to it every day. She has to look this guy in the eye and know what she did to him.
Right, right.
Which was
Well,
basically
that brings up a good point. Because your books are really funny, and I know that's one of the things that people love about it. When you're writing humor, how does that work? I mean, do you consciously think, okay, now I need to be funny, or does it just come organically from how you think about the situation?
I think it comes organically. When I feel the pressure to be funny, I'm not funny. So as I'm writing, I don't think about it. I just have this thing where, stuff happens to me. I'm I Love Lucy reincarnated. And I think that if I can't find the funny in the things that happen to me, then, I'd be depressed. So I just have this way of taking everyday stuff and trying to, you know, find the funny in it. And so for me, this woman who has this one night stand when she didn't want to ever have to think about it again, the funniest thing I could do to her is make her think about it every single day because she has to look at him.
Right,
So I think
right.
that was organic in the plot.
Do you think that that humor and being sexy, I mean, do you think that's all tied in together?
For me, it is. I mean, if I'm writing and I'm not cracking myself up, I'm doing something wrong. And I guess that's how I judge if I hit it the nail on the head.
Right. Well, you mentioned that you have these I Love Lucy adventures, and you write about that a lot, and you make fun of yourself a lot. I mean, you kind of you poke fun at your love of junk food and that sort of thing. But I think to write as much as you do and to write as well as you do, you have to have an incredible work ethic. So, I mean, deep down, I mean, are you really just a very self-disciplined person?
No, I have almost no self-discipline at all. And on top of that, I'm ADHD. And so, like, even now, I'm sitting here bouncing in my seat. It's very, very hard for me to sit still. It's almost impossible to do. So I find that, deadlines put the fear of God into me that I almost have to force myself. I sign a contract with the deadline, and inevitably I'll come up against that deadline because I have messed around for most of it. And so there is very little discipline to what happens.
Really?
Panic.
So how do you pull it off then? I mean, how do you meet those deadlines?
Well, I don't always, but I come close enough that my editors, God love them, put up with me.
So the term alpha male, I think, gets used a lot in romance fiction, but I've noticed that it can mean different. It has a lot of different interpretations. Like, for some people, it's the domineering billionaire, and for some, it's the vampire or the tortured tough guy. So how do you define the perfect alpha male?
Well, I love those guys that you've just mentioned. I inhale them when I'm reading, but I don't write those alpha males. My heroes are usually the reluctant hero, the everyday kind of guy. They're not billionaires, they're not vampires, and they're not saving the world every day. But I think there's all kinds of alpha. I'm married to an alpha guy, which means, he doesn't think he's wrong, he doesn't, has very strong opinions, and I think that's more the guy I write. And then I can find the humor in that because I think it's funny if you think you're not wrong and I know that you're wrong. So I often mind that for comedy too. But my alpha guys are definitely softer in a way than the vampires and the billionaires. They're certainly reluctant.
But and it's interesting because the women are strong too. I mean,
Yes.
and the men seem to like that.
I think that's important. I think today's woman is strong. I'm definitely not writing a pushover, submissive heroine.
So, in terms of the main characters in your new book, both of them live with their sisters. One has two sisters he lives with, and one has one sister, and they've got all sorts of interesting family dynamics here. And of course, your Lucky Harbor series all began with the sisters coming together. So I'm wondering, where did you get your interest in writing about these kind of sibling relationships?
Well, Lucky Harbor, the first three, which are about three sisters, three estranged sisters, that story, that came evolved because I have three daughters. And at the time, they were young teenagers, and they couldn't get along to save their lives. There was, they're like a pack of kittens. They can't stand to be together. They can't stand to be apart. And I just couldn't ever envision a time where they would love each other and want to be friends with each other. And it was really important to me that I write this fiction where I gave these sisters happily ever afters, not with just guys, which I did, but with each other. Like, I wanted them to love each other. So I started out with the worst possible case scenario, 3 estranged sisters who actually couldn't stand to be together. And then I gave them, they inherited a dilapidated old beach inn that was falling off its axis. And I made it so that they had to stay there for one summer to fix it up, to sell it. They couldn't afford to leave, and they couldn't afford to stay. So, and they all had all these years old resentments together. And to me, that was so much fun. And I took it over 3 books. I wrote each sister's story. And that's how Lucky Harbor started. And, that was just me needing my happily ever after for my own daughters.
Now, did they read the books?
No, they were a little too young for it at the time. And, Lucky Harbor, the new trilogy is coming out this summer, 10, 11, and 12. It's the last trilogy. And I think the problem with that is that Mom wrote it. So,
Have they read any of your books?
No. And I'm fine with that.
Really? I mean, does the subject come up? I would think
they read. Well, one of them doesn't read romance, and the other 2 read. But to read your mom's rated R. I mean, in fact, some of them are kind of PG-17.
Right.
That's uncomfortable for them. So I'm okay.
Right.
To read that. They're proud. They love that I do what I do, and they're very proud. They just don't want to read it.
And what about their friends? I mean,
their friends read it.
So, do they come up to them and say, "Hey, I read your mom's steamy book"?
And they hate it, but they're proud. I mean, it's a problem for them.
But it must make you like the coolest mom ever.
Sometimes. It's a curse too. I mean, I am. Sometimes I'm cool, and sometimes they'd be happy to target.
Right. So why did you decide to wrap up the Lucky Harbor series?
It wasn't a conscious effort. I mean, after every trilogy, my editor and I would sit down and talk. Do we really do more? I mean, twice we left, and we're going to come up with a new series, but readers really responded to the series and always asked for more, so we kept going back. We did the Chocoholics, which were 3 strangers got locked in a cafe during a snowstorm. It was the waitress. It was late at night, a nurse that had just gotten off shift, and a stranger new to Lucky Harbor. And they had nothing but each other for that night, and a chocolate cake that was left over. It was the only thing left over to eat. And they talked over this cake and decided that all of their lives kind of sucked, and they were each going to go out and fix their lives. And they made kind of a pact, and they became the Chocoholics. And that was the second trilogy. And I wrote that, and I thought, okay, that's it. But they did well, and so again, Grand Central was like, let's do 3 more. And so I was happy to do 3 more, and then 3 more. And this last 3 are coming out this summer. And I never say never. Who knows what will happen? I'm not like killing everybody off. I can always go back.
So there's hope then. There's a hope. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. That's good. I'm sure people will be relieved to know that. So what about animal magnetism? How many books will you do there?
I don't know. That's those are more separate standalone stories, and I write them because I love the animals, and I don't see myself stopping anytime soon. I'm certainly going to write Wyatt's sisters, so Darcy and Zoe will be getting their own stories, and then from there we'll see.
Okay, great. And it seems like in your series, the sense of place is really important. That the communities themselves are there's almost like characters in themselves. Where do you get your inspiration for those communities?
Well, I grew up in Los Angeles, which is one of the biggest cities in the country, and it was anonymous, and you could go to the store and you didn't see anyone you knew. You could go weeks and weeks without seeing anyone you knew, and I always wondered what it would be like to live in a small town. I mean, I couldn't even really imagine. And then about 14 years ago, we packed up and left Los Angeles and came to a very small town out in the middle of nowhere in the Sierra Mountains. So not only had I left the city, but I had gone to this alien landscape. There was bears and spiders and snakes, snow. I'd never even been in the snow. So it was a whole different game. And I would go to the store and I would see the teacher, one of the girls' teachers. I'd go to the post office. I'd see the gynecologist. I mean, you could not go anywhere. Literally nowhere. And for a writer who was used to being anonymous and going to the store because she needed milk for her cereal in her pajamas and bunny slippers, this was a problem. Like I kept getting seen when I didn't want to be seen. So I, again, decided to mine the funny out of that. And so that's why when I decided to write The Three Sisters, I knew it had to be a small town so I could, in a way, make fun of small towns.
Right. So what about Sunshine, Idaho? I mean, do you think of that as kind of an idealized version of a small town, or do you think that there really are towns like that?
I think Sunshine's probably more realistic than Lucky Harbor. I love Lucky Harbor, and I purposely set that between the mountains and the beach because those are my two favorite places. So Sunshine is, an Idaho ranching town, and those exist across the country. It's much more realistic, and so it's fun for me to go back and forth. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. So as I mentioned at the beginning, the series is just filled with really hunky guys who are, wonderful and gentle and kind to animals. Of the 5 that you have written so far, do you have a favorite hero?
My favorite hero is always the one that I just finished because he's finished and he's new and shiny, and so probably Wyatt. But before that, I was in love with Adam, and then Dell, and I mean all of them. I've loved all of them, but maybe Wyatt the most.
Really, but you're gonna love the next one even more, probably, right?
Of course, yes, of course.
Totally. Sure. I mean, yes. you do start to be in love with your characters.
Yes, and that's the of the job. Yes. Getting to fall in love over and over again with someone new.
Right.
Whatever job happens.
That's right. Well, I mean, it must be great to get to spend all your time in a room with this guy, right, all day long.
Not a bad gig.
So I know, people always wonder if there are people that you know in real life who are reflected in your books. Do you ever have men who think that they're reflected in your books?
No, because if someone is having that attitude, and I think that's going to happen, I'm really quick to point out that fiction is a lot more fun than real life. Yes, it is. I mean, let's face it, where are these men? It's fantasy. That's what it is.
Right. No, I think it would probably take a lot of delusion for most men to think that they are like characters. So, and I wanted to ask you about your very famous friendship with Kristen Higgins, because she's a big favorite here at Booktalk Nation, and I know that you spend a lot of time together, and you appear together, and you write a column together. Have you ever talked about writing a book together?
We have talked about that lots of times. We write for different publishers, and she's insanely busy as I am, and it's not as easy as you think to do that. It would be very difficult to do. But we do talk about it. We make fun about doing it.
But you're not saying never.
I'm not saying never. We seriously talked about doing a sort of a anthology collection. Where, and I think we talked about it with Robin Carr and Susan Anderson at a conference, at an RWA conference a long time ago, and we would each write a short story. Of course, all of us are committed to separate publishers, so like I said, it's really just not that easy, but I will never say never to that.
Right. Well, I know that we have a lot of people on the chat today who want to ask their own questions. So I will now turn it over to Jennifer, and she'll read some of the viewer questions.
Okay.
Yes. So it is about that time. So you'll see that there's a chat box underneath this video window. You can go ahead and type your questions for Jill there. We'll pull some of those. She'll also answer some of the questions that you submitted ahead of time. So I'll go ahead and start sending those over to you. Let's see. Some of these you've already answered. Besides your fear of certain bugs, is there anything else that scares you?
Well, spiders are definitely at the top of the list. I also have an odd, weird fear of going into the ocean. I just want to sit at the ocean's edge with my feet touching the water and my charged e-reader in my hand, but I don't want to swim. I don't know why.
Those are actually two fears of mine too, so I think they're completely normal. This one is from Tara. What is one piece of advice you would give to new romance writers?
Well, to any writer, it would be sit in your chair and write and repeat, 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 and then repeat again. This is not something you're born with. It's a skill you have to hone. So the biggest thing you can do is hone it. Write every day and don't ever give up. If I had given up, by the way, I mean, I'm a 15-year overnight success. So if I had given up even 14 years ago, I'd be a Target or Taco Bell. And there's nothing wrong with those jobs. I often dream about those jobs. But you have to work at this constantly.
Okay. Where does the inspiration for your hero and heroine names come from?
That I would say TV, movies, real life, other books. When I hear a name, I write it down and save it. I have a file. Actually, I have a file right here, and it is filled. It's a piece of. It's filled with pieces from magazine, Cosmo. I get a lot of ideas out of Cosmo. Just pieces of napkins, bills that. Oops, I should have paid that one. Instead, I wrote notes. So I mean, everywhere I get inspiration, I write it down because I don't have a good memory.
And from Dizzy, who is your favorite couple that you've ever written?
Oh, that's so hard. Like I said before, mostly my favorite couple is the couple I've just finished because they're shiny and new and done. That's my favorite when I can type the end and it's over. But looking back over all of Lucky Harbor and all of the Animal series, I have a couple of favorites. Probably Josh and Grace from Forever and a Day from Lucky Harbor. For some reason, I had a real big soft spot for both of them. And I have to say Griff and Kate from Rumor Has It from the Animal series. Probably those two couples were close to my favorites. But that's like asking me to pick my favorite child. And my favorite child, by the way, is always the one right in front of me asking the question.
Okay, so, and looks like she just froze up a little bit, and she's
I'm back.
Coming right back in.
Good.
I can't
back.
see
Sorry.
her video, but there you go. You're back. Okay, great.
I'm here.
There you go.
I don't know if you heard the last question. It was very similar to picking your favorite child. Do you have a favorite series? That's from Tanya.
Oh, boy, that's a tough one. That's usually the series that I'm not currently writing, and I go back and forth. I write a Lucky Harbor and then an Animal and then a Lucky Harbor, and I don't think I can pick.
And from Dorothy, which of your characters do you resemble the most?
Well, I would have to write an I Love Lucy episode to answer that question correctly. But maybe Grace from Forever and a Day, which happens to be one of my favorites because she has a lot of my traits, has a lot of I Love Lucy moments, shall we say.
And let's see, from Stephanie in Austin, Texas, is it difficult to write two sets of series at once? I would think it would be hard to keep track of them. What is your strategy when doing that?
I keep a Bible for each series because even if I wasn't switching back and forth between series, it's hard to keep a series straight, period. It doesn't matter how much time goes between books. I have this ability to kill off all the other characters in my head so I can write the current story. So I keep a Bible for each one, including pictures and character traits and a timeline and, I mean, everything that I could possibly need. And I use that very much when I'm writing.
Let's see. Let's pull another question for you here. A lot of these we've already answered. You're ending about your next projects, and that's from Michelle in Hawaii.
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of that question.
You're ending your Lucky Harbor series soon. Will you be writing a new small town series? And can you tell us a bit more about your next projects? and that's from Michelle in Hawaii.
Well, I'm cooking up something new to come after Lucky Harbor for Grand Central, but I'm not quite ready to talk about it yet. I don't know enough yet, but I can tell you that I do have a Christmas novella coming that is a Lucky Harbor Christmas story. So I guess it's kind of a lie when I say this trilogy is the last Lucky Harbor, because there will be a short Christmas story coming. But as for what comes after that, I'm not quite sure. Maybe in a couple months we can talk about it.
I think we have some more coming here. Well, you just answered this. What comes next? What are you working on next? Very popular question. From Amy in Texas. Jill, I really want to know if there are actual people whom you've met that are an inspiration for your characters.
Yes, there are. Not the guys, though, unfortunately. The sexy guys are all mine. I've made them all up. But sometimes I take character traits that, well, if you annoy me, you're fair game, you're going in a book. It's just the way it is. But I also take other character traits, good character traits, or funny stories that I've heard, or, I'm always asking people that are couples, how did you meet? Have you broken up, and why? I mean, I love to know if people think I'm crazy and nosy, and I am, but it's all for a good cause. I use every little bit of everything I hear about people I somehow use.
And from Cheryl in New Jersey, where's Frat Boy? Will he make an appearance today?
I had to put him in my bedroom and shut the door because they're working on the house next door, and he's either barking to go out or crying because he wants to go meet the people that are working next door. And so I was afraid he'd drive us crazy. So I'm afraid he's in my bedroom, probably sobbing because he's been left out.
Let's see here. Is it difficult to keep an ongoing series going? And do you think about ending a series and the possible disappointment of your readers when you do end one of your series, which I know you did talk about a little bit already?
The thing is you never want to stay too long at the party. So I never know how many books is the right thing. I mean, you can ask some readers and they're like, oh, we're bored, Lucky Harbor, let's move on. And some people are like, please don't ever leave. So I just have to go off my own instincts and not listen to the chatter. I'm thrilled and honored that people love the series and want it to go on forever. I will absolutely come back to it if that turns out to be the case. But like I said, I just don't want to stay too long at the party. I want to go while people still want, yearn for more.
Yes. With that, Jill, I think it's just about time for us to wrap up our chat tonight. So I want to thank everyone who submitted questions, who joined us to watch the video with Jill tonight. If you'd like a signed and personalized copy of Then Came You, you can order that right here on this page. Those sales will close tomorrow night at midnight. So if you'd like that signed and personalized copy, you'll need to make sure that you get it in by then. You can do that here again on this page or at booktalknation.com. Local independent store, Sundance Books, will ship all those orders right to your door. So a big thank you to Karen for interviewing tonight, and a very big thank you to Jill Shalvis. It was so great to have you join us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. And everybody have a great night.